I have a question for each side. And Darius, I'll direct this to you. No exceptions? We've all heard about the ticking bomb scenario. A moment is precious. We need that information right away. If you agree that there can be exceptions, then where do you draw the line?
You know, ticking time bomb scenarios are wonderful stories. It was actually a wonderful novel from the French-Algerian story. It's a wonderful fantasy novel. Never happened. But I will tell you this. My book shows this. Ticking time scenarios, if you want to torture under those circumstances, do you know what the best result, when it's going to get you the best result? During peacetime non-emergency situations, when you need it least.
I don't understand.
In other words, torture doesn't work in wartime situations when you have a ticking time bomb. You have to do, it's a volume business at that point. It is not a retail business.
I still don't understand. If you have a ticking bomb, whether it's wartime or not, and you know somebody knows that there is.
Look, there was a ticking time bomb in World War II, in England, right? Those guys who got off the buses had a ticking time bomb. It was sitting in the bushes in Brighton outside a jail. The British got it because they had public cooperation. And if you want to torture, fine, but you'll not find that bomb.
American leadership and our security, I think we can all agree, are based, at least in part, on our alliances. And if America is seen in its interrogation methods as a renegade, as it has on such issues as, say, the ABM Treaty and the Kyoto Accords, won't that endanger our leadership role and thus our security if we lose that moral high ground and that leadership?
Brooke, we certainly pay a high price for it, but a couple of things need to be mentioned. First of all, unfortunately, the critics that promiscuously lump together the kind of ordinary yelling, spittle flying, psychological pressure, modest sleep deprivation, and label it with a T word are contributing to this problem. The notion that we as a society cannot draw nuances, cannot draw distinctions between a tough treatment, which my colleague derisively referred to as non-torture and true torture, is frankly silly, because that's not what we do in ordinary life in any other difficult issues. But more importantly than that, I am not convinced, I've heard this argument many times, I'm not convinced, Brooke, that the alleged price we're paying for this aspect of our policy is sort of a but-for problem. There's so many other things that unfortunately our friends and our allies do not like because they don't take the threat of radical Islam seriously. They don't believe in serious use of military power. They're beyond that. But if we took that off the table, it would make a difference. But the thing that makes me really angry is the notion that we are helping the recruitment of jihadis, because we're talking about a culture that countenances, without any problem, blowing up children, torturing American prisoners to death. So if you tell me, that we're people who are not troubled by that, they think it's okay. But if they ever read about some level of sexual degradation, humiliation being inflicted on somebody by us, that really ticks them off. I will tell you, these are the people who are not going to win their hearts and minds no matter what try. I find this argument absolutely absurd. And the final point about how our soldiers are treated. Ladies and gentlemen, our soldiers have been tortured in every single war since the end of World War II. So the notion that somehow there's this nirvana, tell this to John McCain. Tell people in Korea that over 50% of American POWs were tortured and stuffed to death. Look, we have to do the right thing because it's the right thing, but let's not pretend that it's going to impact how our people are going to be dealt with by this enemy.
Go ahead, Rick.
I think one of the points you were trying to make is that it will staunch the willingness of our allies to join with us in these coalitions. I think, John, you said coalition is the way we're going to go in the future. I agree with that. But I don't think that this aspect is going to play that big of a role, because when you look at the interrogation techniques that our allies use, they're much tougher than we are. Look at the way the French interrogate. Look at the way the British interrogate. I think they go far beyond our Army field manual.
I would also say, in one sense, I take John Hutson's argument as really a confirmation of what we're arguing, because you didn't address stress. You talked about clear abuses of the interrogation rules. There was no license for stuffing somebody in a sleeping bag and suffocating him to death. That was a violation of the rules, not a interrogation pursuant
Nobody
to them.
stopped it.
And people that have killed detainees have rightly been prosecuted. Most of the deaths occurred at point of capture, not in interrogation, at that point when you are sort of still at war, and it's a very ambiguous state. But in any case, out of the tens of thousands of prisoners that have been taken, 40 criminal homicides is, compared to wars in the past, is a pretty low rate. But in any case, we are not arguing for torture. My side here is talking about stress interrogation, and I would say, as David does, it is perfectly valid to distinguish between keeping somebody up late that, according to the interrogators who have written about this and spoken about this, reversing somebody's sleep schedules does get information, and burning somebody or destroying them and inflicting deliberate severe pain and stress on them and suffering on them. We have to be able to make these distinctions, and again, to conflate the murder of detainees, which is clearly a violation of the laws of war, with the calibrated use of stress, I think does no service to what we need to be debating in the future in the war on terror.